Okay, now for those of you who might be trying to decide how do I start this modeling of this building, I want to provide just some pointers to just point you in the right direction. Now, if you head over to the class website here, you go to the handout, and if you go over to, let's see, you can access Entourage and all these things by clicking this link here. That's on page 2. Then there's a folder called plans. So this folder actually has the drawings in it that you're going to be using. Now, if I look on these drawings here, the first thing that I might notice is that, come on, we're gonna zoom in just a tad. Actually, let's download it so we can see it better. So we're gonna download it and open that up. There we go. So we might notice that these drawings are in millimeters. So we want to be using a millimeter unit. Now, some persons might choose to take this drawing into Photoshop and maybe, you know, cut it and clean it up a little bit more. But if you don't want to actually do that, I want to show you another method that you can use by just dragging the drawing in SketchUp. So for example, if I go to SketchUp here and I just download this drawing and just drag it directly into SketchUp, you will see that it pops up here. And that's great. However, right away, this is supposed to be 5,500 thereabout, right? So, and this is actually 1,800. I know it's a bit blurry, but you can kind of make out the numbers. Now, obviously, if I use my pencil tool and draw a line here, and I draw another line roughly about here, there we go. And I'm going to use my dimension tool. Now notice I'm using the large tool set. So remember, you go to View, Toolbars, and you turn on the large tool set. And that's what gives you these tools here. So I am going to actually use the dimension tool. And let's see what this dimension is here. Come on. Wait. Let's do that again. We need to be clicking the point. Here we go. Let's angle it a little bit. That's good enough. Right. So, oh, actually I'm not in millimeters, so let me change that real quick. So I'm going to go to View, and I'm going to go to Model Info, right? And that is basically telling us information about the 3D model, including the units. So my unit is set to architectural, so we're going to set that to engineering, and we're going to carry our decimal points to none. We don't need any decimal places. All right, good. And oh, we do want to change it to decimal, right? And then change it to millimeters. There we go. And then we set our precision. Yeah, that's correct. All right. Okay, good. Now let's close this. Now we can see here that this measures not 5,500. So obviously when you drag your image into SketchUp, you can't just start modeling because it is not going to equate to the dimensions. Let's close this tab here. I don't need that, right? So that's the first thing. So the first thing we need to do is actually scale our drawing. Now, to scale our drawing, all all we need to do is to set up a reference measurement. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me delete this dimension here. Now, we know that, well, let me leave that dimension. But we know that this distance here does not equal 5,500. So what is 5,500? Well, if I draw a line from, let's say I draw a line from here, and I'm going to now type with my keyboard. I want you to notice this section down here. This is telling me the length that I have currently, right? So I'm going to actually type in this section. Let's do that again. I'm going to click here and I'm going to type 5,500 and press enter. Now, according to this, 5,500 is all the way down here. So obviously my entire drawing that's about this needs to be rescaled, and possibly will be something like about that. So I need to now rescale this drawing here by upsizing it. Now, in order to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to use this quick and easy trick. We're going to select that base there. We're going to go to the scale tool, and we are going to just use these corners, and we're just going to just about eyeball it. When I say eyeball, meaning we're going to look and see when it reaches this point here. Now that's the best we can do because this is actually a sketch. It's not vector lines, so it is not going to be 100%, and that's going to play a key part in what I'll say right after. So if I go to camera and I change my view to a top view, there we go, so we can see this a little better. And you know, I might want this to get a little smaller. Let me zoom in a bit. Let's make that a little smaller here. Now, if you're trying to scale it and it's not quite giving you what you want, I want you to keep your eyes down in this part down right here, right? So notice as I try and scale, it's really jumping, there we go, by pretty much 0.01 every time I move this around. So if I was jumping between these two spots and I wanted it to land exactly, then I can see that's 1 and that's 0.99. So I could just type in, you know, maybe when I go to scale, I could just type in 0.995 and it will just drop right in the middle there. So you can always type in a value if the value that you want isn't popping up, like this one here. You know, maybe you want it to be in that, so I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to type 0.995. there we go. So that's just another tip that you can use there. All right, so now that we have this scaled, we would do the same thing for the elevation. So if I go back to my folder, there, I want to go to the elevation, and I'm going to download the elevation as well. Okay, now I'm not going to go through the entire model because this is indeed an assignment. It's something that you guys would need to do on your own, definitely. However, let me tell you something about SketchUp. If you start wrong, then everything else in your model will be incorrect actually. So I'm just giving you some options to start your drawing, right? So this is the elevation here. Now, in this case, I'm going to use my move tool and just kind of move this out of the way. There we go. Now, ideally, the elevation walls should line up. So what I would do here, I would just actually trace a line from here. Make sure that this line is straight. You want to make sure that it is as straight as possible. And I would seek to do the same thing with the elevation. I'm going to take my move tool, and well, I'm just going to kind of center it a little bit, and then I'm going to scale it. There we go. Scale this side down as well, a little smaller. So all I'm doing now is pretty much just eyeballing it. And the reason again why I'm eyeballing it is because it's not as if though I'm eyeballing it, I'm still going to use the dimensions. And this is the point that I wanted to get to. The dimensions are more important than what you eyeball. Let me repeat. The dimensions that you do here are more important than what you eyeball, right? So for example, if you're going to draw let's say you're going to draw this wall here, and this wall must equal 5,500. But if you eyeball it, if I say, let me start here and draw a line here and go across like that, then what you might notice is that this wall that you have here, this line that you drew here, is not actually 5,500. As a matter of fact, this line is 5,526. So this is the key point I'm saying. You're not going to model your building based off eyeballing it. You're going to model your building based off dimensions. Now, the only reason I've chosen to show you this method of kind of eyeballing it to line up is that you want to kind of know that you're on the right path. So it's just used as a kind of check-in device. Also, it's used for areas that do not have any dimensions. So for example, let's say this couch that is here. Now, I don't expect you guys to model the couch. But if you were going to get a couch from, let's say, the internet, from 3D Warehouse, which I'm going to show you how to do in a bit, you want to get one that is pretty much the same size. And there are no dimensions given for the couch. So in essence, you have to eyeball something like that. But for things that have definite measurement, like the width of this window, that window must be 850. Not what you guesstimate it is by tracing it, right? Now you can also model without you using any kind of referencing, meaning I could start modeling this building without dragging in my drawings inside the viewport. But for a drawing that you don't have all the measurements for, and you know that it's proportionally accurate, you want to drag in your building, your drawings, to make sure that you're on the right track. So that is a very important point. I don't expect anybody's house, when I measure it, it should be less or more than 5,500, regardless of what this very blurry drawing is saying. Now, pretty much at this point, in my opinion, I would start drawing from the floor plan and kind of work my way up. I would use things like the rectangle tool. And you can see me using the rectangle tool there. Now, again, notice how I'm using the rectangle tool to get my wall there. Now, I'm not going to eyeball the depth of this wall because I actually have the measurements here, right? You can see that this distance here is 2,650 and this one is 3,050. Now, of course, when I minus those two numbers, I get 400. That would mean that 200 would be the width of my wall here. So this length here would be 200, and this length here would be 200. Now, because I know that it's 200, I'm not going to use my drawings to guess what it is. Instead, I'm going to ensure that this width is 200. So if I click this line there, I can see that this is not actually 200. So I'm going to need to make that 200 there. Now, I could do this by just grabbing my line there. Then I'm going to make this line 200. I'm going to drag this all the way up there. And remember, I already know that this from here to here, oops, you want to make sure that these lines are straight. Now here's another important tip. If a line is lean, it is going to actually destroy your entire drawing, right? And when I say destroy, I mean when you get to a further point in the model, you're going to realize that your roof and everything is not lining up. And chances are that will happen because from the foundation, some of these lines were actually not accurate. So you want to ensure to use accurate line work. Use lines that are parallel and so forth. Now here is another interesting tip. Now notice if I try to put my mouse here, it's not showing me this intersection, right? You see this intersection here. Now this is something that will also commonly happen to you, and I want you to watch closely as I try to manipulate this intersection. It's just not working out. And why isn't it working out? Well, if I kind of orbit my thing this way, you realize that the intersection, these lines don't actually intersect, but one line is on top of the other. But when you look at it from this point of view here, they look like they do intersect. So this is another one of those common issues as well. And that is actually because this line is actually hovering above the line. So these are things that will happen to you as you model and go along. And you know, when something is wrong, it's much easier to delete it and actually draw it over. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to go across here and type 200. Now I know that you might be saying, no way am I deleting a line and drawing it over, but in SketchUp it actually works out to be much easier to do that. Now notice I'm getting an intersection here, right? And if I use my eraser tool, it will actually erase these extended lines. So I can actually erase this tool here as well, and it will only leave me with those sections there. Oh, I actually need to draw this line down now, so I may have deleted that by mistake. Alright, here it is. Now you want to ensure that your lines actually snap. So notice that my line snapped to the green axis there, and once I do that, you will see it infills. Now once it's infilled, that means that your line is flat and accurate. Well, for the most part. Sometimes it's not. But you want to ensure that that is accurate. So I'm not eyeballing to get this measurement because I actually have the measurement. Now the next thing you want to do, so for example, if I want to draw this wall across now, I can start using the rectangle tool. And I could, if I know that this is 2,850 by 200, I can write 2,850, comma 200. I can write 2850. And I know that will be the exact length. Comma 200. No. There we go. And I know that that will be the exact length. So I can actually type in dimensions as well. And for this line here, if I really wanted to, I could really just delete that line because they're all on the same plane. So that in essence is how you kind of get going. And don't be surprised if there are things that you have to build twice as you go along. This is a learning method as well. Now there are other tools that you're going to find out that will make your life a little easier. For example, let's look at the window tool, and I'm just going to draw. I'm going to just show a little example here. So let's say I extrude this wall upward like that. Because there was a drawing here, that's why I'm getting a line here. So I want to remove that line, so I'm going to use my eraser tool and erase that line. Now I know that there is a window here. Now because there is no dimensions for where the window is, but it's quite actually evident that it is in the center of this 1800 space, right? So remember, you want to be as accurate as possible. So I'm going to start here and I'll draw a reference line, and this is 200, and I'm actually just drawing a line to help me guide me as to where these things are. And then after the 200, I have this being 1800. Now notice when I come back down here, if I can just, there we go. I'm just gonna snap. Now I'm actually looking for this blue line that's right there. Now once I get the blue line, I can hold shift, and that way I don't have to worry about being lean again. Now notice that this may or may not exactly land on this line, but it doesn't matter because I know for a fact that this line here is 1800, and that's what matters, not necessarily what the sketch is showing me. The dimensions is what matter. Now the sketch only matters for elements that you can't tell how wide those elements are, so you have to remember that. All right. Now I don't know what is the width of this window, but I can pretty much tell that it is in the center of this wall here. So I would need to now find the midpoint of this wall here, which is like that. Now remember, when you draw a line, you're actually cutting the polygon. If you remember from the exercises, I could have also used the tape measure tool and just project a line. I could do it this way, where I click this edge here and project a line off this edge, that's that dashed line, and project it to this center point here, and that's how I would get a point there. Then I don't know exactly how far this is, but I could get the idea that I'm trying to do here is that I am trying to offset a point there and offset a point there, and these two offsets must be equal. Now I could use what's called my offset tool, and my offset tool is actually located here. That's my offset tool there. Now if I use the offset tool, I could offset the, I can't actually offset a measurement. I can only offset the actual line. So let's use an actual line. I'm just going to draw a line there so I can use the offset tool. So if I click on this line here, that was the problem. This is not the offset tool. The offset tool is this tool here, not the one above. The one above is called a follow me tool, which is another advanced tool. Okay, so we're going to use the offset tool. All right, so I'm going to click that line here. And now the way how the offset tool works is, if this was an element here, as you can see, if I click it, it's going to offset it to be a particular distance here. Now what I want to achieve is maybe the offset tool wouldn't work in this case, because ideally what I want to do is I want to use my tape tool. Actually, that would be a better tool. So let's go for my tape tool, and I want to offset this line here like that. And if I watch my length, this is looking like about maybe 260. And I'm going to click this line here and offset it 260. Maybe it's not that small. Maybe it's actually a little bigger. So that would give me where my window is. Now for that, I can just assume that the height of my window is also going to be 260 plus 260. So pretty much I have constructed the guidelines for my window there. Now I definitely don't need these lines here getting in the way, so let me remove these lines actually. To remove that dimension, and I'll also remove, oops, there's a line that, so I'm going to use my tape tool. I'm just going to offset this tape down here. There we go. So that I can remove that line. So notice that these lines that I put in, I always try to remove them when I'm not using them. What you can keep are the measurement lines, because they are not impacting your drawing. But once you use the pencil tool, it's going to cut your polygons. But now it would, I mean, it's probably higher than this, but this is just an example that I'm giving you guys. Besides, you can actually move this window when it's actually done by using the move tool. If the window was supposed to be higher, you could actually move the window higher. So notice that
time is 4 p.m.
Notice that I would have to estimate the height of this window here, because this doesn't really tell me the height, but we could assume that the height is the same height as the door, which would be a reasonable assumption, right? Which would mean that the height of the window from the ground would be 2,250. So I just need to measure 2,250 from the ground inside. But notice that the ground inside here, we get an idea that if we subtract this measurement here from this measurement here, it would give us the height of the ground, and hence the measurement in between. So we can make the assumption that the wall, the width, the depth of the floor is pretty much the same as the width of the wall here. So that would make it 200. So to get the floor depth, by the time you finish drawing these walls in, you would end up having a floor that you can just draw in between all of the walls that you have. So let's see here. Let's use my tape measure tool, and I could offset this 200. There we go. That looks about right. And I could offset this. How far is this? Go back here. Okay, yeah. So we have a dimension here that we can actually use. So so what we want to do is work out what this dimension would be here. And that would work out to be about 200, about 400 between that distance there. So I could offset this at 400 like that. So that's how we get that dashed line there. Now we can easily offset this line to this point